Sorry. Sorry. Hey guys. We're just gonna, do it. I don't even know. I'm still trying to get into the hang of doing YouTube lives and things being like vertical and not horizontal. I don't know if I really want it to be horizontal or not. Yeah, it told me to put it back. Whatever. I think I like this better. Okay, so the topic of today's discussion basically was photosynthesis, and the way that this kind of all came to me was because like I said on my TikTok live yesterday, I was planting. So I have some, and then there's Seraph too. I have some vegetables that I'm growing, and it's spring, and this was actually channeled on the 16th of March. So the day before St. Patrick's Day on a Saturday, I did this in Pisces season. And this is also kind of reminding me a little bit of a transit of relevance for myself recently, because I occasionally check in with what's going on in the stars as it contrasts what's going on with me personally. And I've had Saturn squaring my Neptune for a couple months now, and it's been kind of difficult because I feel like I have this challenge of materializing or grounding a lot of my spiritual concepts or ideas or visions for myself. I have in my idea, I have in my head an idea of who I could be or what I could accomplish, but then there's the practical steps and long-term processes required to actually get there. So for example, one of the things that really encapsulates this for me, an example of it is I had this idea that I was going to think about how I can monetize my art, and then I was looking into tattoo apprenticeships in the area. So I went and talked to people who did what I was looking into doing and had them look at my work. And then the person I talked to told me basically to they gave me pointers and told me what kind of art style is most common, and then encouraged me to kind of practice in that art style. And then I did it, and then I was okay. But then there's the consistency and the following up with being the person that you want to be. And I think when it comes down to really manifesting certain things, the reason why not everybody can do things is because not everybody has it in them to be consistent in the process of doing things. And then I've had people when I'm live sometimes on TikTok come in and ask me what it takes to be a tarot reader. And it's a different level of devotion, it really different strokes for different folks, but it's kind of the same process. You can't just pick up the cards one day and then decide that you're gonna do it, because it's gonna reflect in the quality of your work, and people are gonna be able to tell the difference between someone who has put in the work and studied what they do, their craft, versus someone who hasn't and is really kind of in it for whatever they're in it for, a more superficial reason. But yeah, I'm kind of getting off track a little bit. I'm gonna bring it back to the topic of photosynthesis because I wanted to discuss that specifically and very intentionally. So the definition from Google about photosynthesis is the process by which organisms transform light energy into chemical energy. And I know a lot of times you hear photosynthesis and you think of a plant, and yeah, that's the material world example of how that process works for us, that we're not a part of directly. But I was thinking, it doesn't have to necessarily just be applied so literally, basically. So the idea of being able to transform seemingly nothing into something is really what I was kind of picking up the most out of. You plant a seed, and then it develops into something that's self-sustaining over time, through consistency with its own process to sustaining itself. So I've planted a couple of different seeds here that are all gonna kind of grow at different rates and give me a different product, and they all have different needs, and it's kind of my responsibility to be able to sense the needs of each of my different seeds, and make sure that I'm meeting all of those different seeds needs because they're different. I planted them all at the same time. And the way that this is like really kind of like spiritually, like, you know, talking to me, like when I'm thinking about the subtle context to my actions and the consequences for them beyond a material plane, I'm thinking like this is kind of a metaphor for my life and what I'm doing right now. Like I have a couple of different projects that I've initiated that are gonna take different amounts of time, but I'm getting kind of all of the ideas for them right now, which is kind of weird, and it feels a little bit overwhelming because like I've just like today I was reaching out to someone who contacted me from TikTok and was wanting to collaborate with me, and they're like crochet things, and like I've been wanting to, you know, like bring physical tangible products into my shop that I can like send out, like protective charms and things like that, like something that I've been wanting to do, maybe like jewelry and things like that, but with like, you know, like metaphysical intention embedded into them, because I've been getting really good with like, you know, protective energy work and banishing and like warding and things like that. And then also not only that, but like I have my own sock monkey right here, and I like enchanted this with, and I have it holding this Virgin de Guadalupe, like so he sits on my desk just like holding it, and this is, his name is Max, and this is actually kind of like a, like, I don't want to say romantic attraction specifically, but it does like have attractive omens, and my intention in having it on my desk is that it's going to not only like kind of beautify the space, but make working more pleasant for me, because like I don't have as many decorations, and this is kind of like how I'm branching out into doing that, because I have been in a pretty like, you know, survival mode. And that's another thing, is that I've been switching into like a more passive gear in my life. Like if you guys are like have been around for like the past couple of months, you'll notice that like I was in a very masculine energy because my survival was like almost constantly like at risk. So like now that things have kind of changed energetically, I feel like I'm allowed to be more relaxed, and it's allowing for me to get more creative ideas. Whereas before, like, because my energy was so tight, there was like little room for me to like have new ideas, because I needed to kind of stick to what was tried and true. But now, like, you'll also notice that I've changed my booking and like kind of like revamped things. And it's this energy of like photosynthesis, right? Because me like changing who I am, because that's another thing that I wanted to speak about, because guys, there's a lot that kind of goes into this, and it's weird to kind of like explain your own mental process, because a lot of these like ideas that I get seemingly don't connect at all. But to me they do. So let me just try to like do my best to walk you through my brain, because it's really complex up there, and a lot of the connections don't maybe exist within your mind. But so after I got the idea of photosynthesis, right, the idea of a plant using a glucose molecule, because the glucose comes from the photosynthesis from the sun, but afterwards that glucose, that sugar that's used from the sun, from some kind of inspirational kind of light, clarity, whatever the light is in the situation, after you get the sugar from it, like dopamine, the positivity, you then have to transmute that into energy. And that process is called cellular respiration, and it happens in the mitochondria of the cell, the powerhouse of the cell. And afterwards you get this yield of like net 30 to 32 ATP, and I think ATP stands for like adenosine triphosphate. You can look in that up. It's like a biology concept if you're like wanting to look, you know, into the specifics of that process. But basically at the end of it, you get like 30 to 32 ATP, and the reason why it's not like 34 to 36 is because you have to expend some of the energy that you create in the process of cellular respiration to continue to cellular respirate. So then I was talking about this idea of like necessary like sacrifice in the pursuit of like accomplishing something. So the glucose is kind of metaphoric or symbolic of like inspiration. Like for example, like going back to the tattoo thing, I felt really inspired to like become a tattoo artist because I saw it as a way to expand my creativity in a way that allows me to not only like, you know, make it's profitable, right? And then it also allows you to maintain your own personal lifestyle, which is something that I'm interested in, right? Because I don't really want to, I like to be in control of my time and how I spend it and how I, you know, where I put it. And I was thinking more of like, you know, side hobby kind of thing. But then I had to realize that the amount of energy that I needed to expend in order to like really like seriously pursue it was more than what I had to expend at that time, because of the fact that I have so many different like seeds over here. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to grow, as much as I just need to like allocate my energy that I'm producing properly so that things are developing at the pace that makes sense. Like, it wouldn't make sense for me to change all of my focus from what I do currently to doing that just because it's an idea that I hadn't felt, you know, called to. Like, I still have to like be reasonable or like rational in the pursuits that I'm taking on if I want them to like, you know, develop in a way that makes sense, because you can't rush natural growth. And that's another thing as well. Like, if you do see that growth is like expedited or it happens like super quickly, there's a really good chance that whatever you're growing in, the container may not be like, you know, sufficient for it. And you might have to change that container quicker than, you know, you might expect or prefer. So there's like something about just properly assigning things their worth, and being patient with that process and not feeling like you need to like rush into anything. Because the rush kind of is indicative of like the fact that you're being motivated out of ego. Like, if you're motivated out of ego, it's not gonna last, because it's just like a sugary kind of like high experience. You're just trying to get some element of validation in your pursuit, and then the lack of immediate satisfaction will then turn you off to the process. And that's what I was saying before, like, if it was easy, like, everybody would be doing it. And I think if you're the sirens, like, if you're in a process right now and you're like maybe coming up against a wall, or you've been pushing against something, or let's say for example you recently like raised your prices and you haven't like been receiving as frequent of booking as you might like have been, you know, experiencing in the past, and you could be like, oh my god, am I doing something wrong because of that? Well, I think it's actually a shift here, where because your light is changing, the kinds of people that you're meant to be attracting is also changing. So if you are noticing that you're becoming more serious, it's a really good chance that you need to be around people who are more serious. So like, even like, and this can apply to so many different things, because I'm talking in like a spiritual way, like a spiritual development kind of thing, but this could also be something that applies to your relationships, whether this is like business relationships or this is like romantic relationships. You might find that as you change or as you develop or as you grow, certain relationships literally just can't persist because they don't reflect your authenticity, and it's going to be like something that you feel allergic to, or that you are like bothered by. Like, there's like an irritant, like a pollen kind of situation here. So yeah, then I want to move on to the next thing, because this whole thing kind of led me to the idea of like karma, in a sense, because of the way that light led me to Light Yagami from like Death Note. And I don't know if how many of you guys, you know, actually watch Death Note, but I liked a Death Note a lot, and I resonated a lot with the main character, Light Yagami, even though he isn't like, you know, a typical hero. What I really connected to about him was his like righteousness in action, and his like intelligence level, and then honestly kind of like the pride of it all. And like Light's whole thing is he basically is blessed by a demon in order to be able to, well, I'm saying demon, but really it's less of a negative thing in my mind, as it is like kind of like this, the idea of an undertaker, where there's less of a negative connotation with the role of being you know, a bringer of death and transformation, because we can't always like, I mean, in my mind at least, I don't always associate death with like a negative thing. Like, I think death in a more like metaphoric sense is just a transition. And because, you know, I'm in the mentality of not being overly attached to my material body, the idea of death from the material plane doesn't really scare me as much, and it's not something that, you know, it's not something that I shy away from, basically. So the idea of being blessed by a shinigami, like a death angel, a death bringer, an undertaker, with the tool to like kind of script or like manifest or create a reality for yourself that you deem is the one that you want to live in, is something that, you know, like isn't super foreign to me. Like that's something that I relate to because of, you know, my life experiences and like kind of what I do. Not to say that I necessarily like, you know, I have like a shinigami with me, but I like the idea of being divinely supported in your pursuits because I feel connected to that as well. And I feel like a lot of the reason why I am divinely supported is because of my moral alignment. So then there is the protection of a moral alignment, because of light, his whole thing is like, I have to cleanse the earth of like evil, and like it's my responsibility to be a judge, a witness. And then I've been really picking up on this idea of being like a karmic witness, because even in my recent life, in my recent relocation to across the country, I've been placed into an environment that starkly contrasts my own moral alignment, and it's really been difficult because of that like allergen kind of situation where I'm in. Well, first of all, it's also significant to mention that I've moved back to my place of birth. So I used to live like within like 15 miles of where I live right now. I was born like here in this county, and I moved away from here when I was very young. But the abuse that I experienced while I was here, I experienced like in my very early childhood. I experienced like here, like it's rooted here. Like my basically origin story, like it started here, and it was, I had a really tough. It was really bad for me, like since birth. Like when I was born with 2 holes in my heart. Like they didn't even release me from the hospital right away because they were like, we don't know if she's gonna live. So like it was tough from the jump. It didn't get any easier from that point on. It just like, and that's the thing, I feel like I've kind of come full circle here in terms of like a sense of power, because I've also noticed the pattern within my own life, because I've been like writing out what's happened in my life for the first time in, you know, like probably a really long time. So every like 7 years or so, I go through some like spiritual up leveling. So when I was 7 years old, I joined my family church, and when I was 14 years old, I was baptized at that same church. And now I'm about to turn 21 years old, and I'm like expanding, and I have my own spiritual like, you know, business. I mentor people. I do consulting work. Like it's like I'm wondering like what's next, like how this is gonna kind of like build upon itself, and it makes me really excited. And that brings me back to this energy of like because I was picking up the question that I was asking myself at one point during this whole like me thinking in my head session on Saturday was, how can I apply the process of photosynthesis outside of direct biology? And then I was like, when am I the sun, and then when am I the plant? So I've definitely been developed by my own life into like, I wanted to say tree, but I feel like even if I was a tree, I'm still kind of in like my more developmental era, because I'm still pretty young, you know. Like I've definitely noticed that I have a couple of rings, but I probably only have like, you know, like just those 3 rings right now. So I'm not like, you know, a big boss, you know, I know it all, that kind of thing, but I am, you know, a proper authority in my own way. So I'm at the point now where I can resonate with being both the plant and the sun. So I have a platform now that allows me to be the light that inspires chemical reactions in other people, and that's an amazing feeling. And it's like it gives you that validation of being important, and that's something that, you know, like for me specifically, I really yearned for, because I didn't get that a lot when I was growing up. Like nobody was really telling me like, hey, like you're really like a cool person, like you, just you, like when you're good, and like we appreciate you. It was, for me, I got my validation for being good at like school. So being smart was where I was getting like all my validation from. Like it was the reason why I was a golden poster child. So like everyone in my family was like basically lifting me up for being academically achieving, because it was kind of uncharacteristic for some of the people around me, not only like within the region but also in my own family, so, and like within my demographics as well. So it was super like a bragging kind of thing to be able to say, oh, here's my daughter and she's in college and high school at the same time, and she's graduating with college and she has a really high GPA. It was like a flex basically. And my family is really superficial, so having those material world like checkpoints of success were like really all they really cared about. And yeah, so I went through my own transformation process because I, growing up in that environment, that was like bad lighting. Like it wasn't, I didn't have a positive role model. So I was kind of building myself up in this very superficial way. And a lot of my pursuits and goals were like based off of status and money and material achievements. And I remember like whenever there was like a career day, or like whenever we would do those kind of like, what kind of job do you think you might want activities in like our like student seminars and stuff like that, I would just look up like what makes the most money. And then I remember like seeing lawyer up there, and then I was like, yeah, okay, cool, I'll just be like a civil rights, you know, like I'll just do civil law and I'll defend Black people, because at the time I was like I was like really big on my social justice era, because there was a lot of like 2016 was right when I was like developing as an individual, and I was seeing Black people my age being killed in the streets, and there was a lot of like protesting that was going on at that time, and I felt super connected to the cause of, you know, uplifting my own people. And so that was a main motivation for me and some of my career goals. But then I became severely like politically burnt out, because I was realizing that no matter like how loud I was screaming into the void, like there was no like, there was nothing really happening, nothing was really changing, because the power still was where it was, and I was like, you know, within myself unable to control people around me, and that I was, you know, only really exhausting myself energetically by trying to convince people to be better than what they wanted to be, because I was the kind of person who would like go online and like argue with people in like the comments, and like, you know, really get into like drama, and like really like personally allow myself to like get upset about things that were happening like on the internet like thousands of miles away that like I could never like control. And it just wasn't good for me, like mentally and emotionally. Like I was just way too invested into it. So I took a leave of absence from like the world. I was here, but I wasn't here, and I didn't really engage with anybody. And this was like after I graduated high school for like a year and some change. I basically didn't exist outside of like observing myself from within my bedroom. And this is when my family really started to dislike me because I was metamorphosizing. I was basically like a caterpillar in a cocoon. And there was even a point in time where I had like an argument with my mom, and I was like, you know, as I'm developing and understanding myself and like becoming conscious for like on a level that I never been conscious before for the first time in my life. And I was thinking about my childhood and like what had made me who I was. And I went to my mother, I remember this very clearly, like one day, and we just like sat in the garage and like had this like 2-hour conversation. And I was like, well, like here's some of the things that happened in my childhood that really like negatively affected me, and here's some of the ways that you like perpetuate that now. So I'd really like appreciate it if we could like find a way to develop, you know, like to move forward, to like change. And then I remember so clearly she was like who do you think you are to like ask me to change? Like I'm the adult and I'm just fine like how I am right now, and if you don't like it, then it's like fuck you basically. And then it was so fucked up, because like she was really like mad at me because I had a grievance with the way that she was parenting me. And it was like, how dare I have like an opinion about the way that I was being parented. Like I don't know, like she made me like, in that moment when she was saying it, I actually like internalized it, and I felt bad, you know, because I was like, you know, I don't want to be made to feel entitled for having personal boundaries. And that's really the way that like she had set up her relationships with her kids, was like, you don't really get to have a negative feeling about anything that's happening here, because I'm doing what I'm doing, and you just need to accept that as being my best, even if you know that it isn't, even if you know that I could be doing more, that I could be rising to more occasions, or that I am operating out of some kind of bias or prejudice towards you. Like, you're not allowed to ever say anything about that, because then I have to address it. It's just, you know, it sucked. So, you know, I didn't have a lot of positive examples of who I wanted to be, or even what it meant to be a happy person, because I didn't have family members who like were living happy lives. Like, my mother was like severely unhappy, like for pretty much all of my childhood, and her being depressed and unhappy was a main reason why everyone around my family was like, don't say anything, because like she's already depressed and unhappy. Because my mom had made a series of choices like in her own life that just like perpetuated her own unhappiness. And, you know, whether or not she was aware of the fact that she was doing that didn't really stop the fact that she was kind of making the same choices over and over again. And that, you know, it was just really weird, because it was interesting. When I was growing up, there was like this huge thing of like, we need to have sympathy for your mother because she's the victim. She's a victim. Like, your mother is a victim. She literally, everything bad is happening to her all the time, and she's not apparently involved in any of it, and it's just all happening to her, and she's not a part of any of it. And nobody can be mad at her because she's just a poor lady, and she's single, and she's alone. But like, that was the image that she wanted to have of like, you know, not being an asshole. But my mom actually, you know, if I really, you know, look at it, she kind of sucks a little bit. So I can understand why a lot of her relationships didn't work out. But regardless, I'm not here to just talk shit about my mom. The point of the bad lighting was just that sometimes you can grow a little bit in the wrong direction and not even know that that's the wrong direction, because it's the only direction that you've ever seen demonstrated. So it's important to then be aware of your sun energy, your demonstration of yourself, and where that comes from. And when I was thinking about what aspect of self kind of represents that, and then where that could be represented in the zodiacs, I went to Aries and Libra, because Aries is like, well, you know, traditionally like the beginning of the zodiac, it's the leader, it's the ram, it's determined. And then Libra is the exact opposite, and it represents like the other. So it's like the self versus the other. Not because, you know, the other isn't also the self, but just because that's kind of the relationship of like the sun. It's a ray. It has a focal point, or like a point of origin, and then it goes out into a direction from that. So yeah, I had this book that I'll show you the book, hold on. This is the book. I love this book. This is a great book. It was only $5 or $3 actually, but it has like a wealth of knowledge. I would like screenshot it if you're interested. It's not like a super thick read or anything like that, but it makes it really good to like reference whenever I feel called to look into a specific sign. So basically I'm just gonna like walk you guys through Aries real quick, and then we're gonna talk about Libra, and then it's gonna kind of basically just back up what I was saying about the directional energy. So it actually references the Bible in this book, which I really kind of like, because I think it can be a grounding force for people who don't really believe in the zodiac as much, but really have a more conservative approach to religion and philosophy. So if you are coming in watching this from like a more conservatively Christian religious background, and you can't really connect as much to the zodiac, then maybe these Bible quotes will like, you know, kind of like rub your belly a little bit more. So Revelation 5:12 says, "Worthy is the lamb that was slain to receive power and riches and wisdom and strength and honor and glory and blessing." And scripture basically talks about the fact that Satan operates in this world, but can only do so to the extent that God allows, and that's proven in the first chapter of Job. So the idea is that over time, Satan is constrained more and more and more as like this spiritual war kind of persists over time and cycles are completed and then are allowed to be built upon. Like you know, this idea of like an age of Aquarius thing where we're moving into a time where people are like becoming more and more progressive, since we can probably like mark like the 60s when people were like, you know, really using a lot of psychedelics and like really opening up their mind, and then people like first started to want to like resist like industrial revolution and like the technological advancement that's kind of like, you know, entrapping us. So the first decan of Aries, well actually let me back up check a little bit. So it says, it is the Lamb which takes us across the dangerous seas and delivers us into the city of safety and refuge in heaven. And it yields the golden fleece which provides the garment of righteousness for the believer. So trash people. Yeah, and then like there's like this idea of divine favor through like being sacrificed, like sacrificing temptation and being worthy in the eyes of God. And then the decans, the 3 decans that kind of split up Aries into its constellations are Cassiopeia, the enthroned woman, which is basically the church when it's not enslaved. And then there's Cetus, the sea monster, 2nd decan, and it's like a big sea snake. And then the serpentine kind of symbolism represents it being connected to like Satan. And because it's so big, because it's like the biggest constellation up there, especially as it relates, or specifically as it relates to the zodiac signs, it represents like Satan and his control over the material world. And Cetus is pursuing Andromeda, which represents the church in shackles. So when it's in slavery, it represents like temptation. So think of any kind of, you know, kind of like one, like the 7 deadly sins basically. Like that's kind of what it represents. In whatever way that like, you know, would make each person within the church kind of fall victim, because not everybody is going to have the same vulnerabilities, the same sins as other people based off of their own experiences with those sins. So like, for example, like, I don't have to explain that. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't even want to talk about like my experiences of that, because I've recently had a specific sea snake around me that's been trying to tempt me with money, basically, to do things that would and basically entrap me. So I'm on this journey, right, to become worthy of divine favor. Well, honestly, I don't have to actually become worthy. That's another key thing, because when we're starting here, we're starting with worthiness. Like Jesus has already died for our sins. We've already been redeemed. Like we're already worthy of favor. So we don't have to try to pursue that. It's more so just maintaining it. That's the problem. Because there are so many material world temptations, and there are so many pathways available to us through our own personal choice and our own individuation and our own like decisions of what we want to like commit to over the long term and what we want to like be allegiant to. And that is what kind of jeopardizes our divine favor, our own decisions with what we do with it. Because like if we're abusing it, then that puts us we then are like kind of putting the shackles back on, because at any point we can take them back off. And people, and I'm seeing it's 3333 on the timestamp, which is mind body soul alignment, and it's also 1234 my time. So there's like this progression element. But yeah, let me move forward. So yeah, okay, I was also saying that like this constellation Cetus, the 2nd decan, the sea serpent that's pursuing the church to tempt them, represents kind of like Satan, and that's like that bad lighting energy. And it says, or I wrote the note that the sea serpent is the natural enemy of the fish, which represents the church in Jesus, and that it taking up so much of the sky represents like this energy of bad lighting or like bad influences, where technically you can grow, but it's like, what direction are you growing into? Hey Skelly, I was just talking about you earlier. But yeah, bad lighting includes like rumors, gossip, slander, lying, and just like otherwise low vibrating consciousness, envy, greed, things like that. And then the 3rd decan is Perseus, the breaker, and it represents the concept or archetype of Christ as the breaker, as the redeemer. So once again, the persecution never lasts. Like you always end a cycle with like the divine favor coming out on top. Like that's something that is consistent. And then we now have like 6 people in here, which is like this energy of like balance and like kind of sustainability. So like this Aries energy, this sun energy, as you continue to develop, there's always the opportunity to kind of like come out on top, so long as you are kind of allegiant to, you know, your source, since your son, your lord, your father, whatever you choose to be subservient to here, like it's your choice. You can choose the bad lighting or you can choose the good lighting, but you have to also understand that the fight against the bad lighting is not an easy one, and that's why it's like the sacrifice of the lamb. You have to like put something up, like you have to give something of yourself in order to resist this sea serpent, because the sea serpent is going to tell you that moving along with it makes your life easier. So let's say, for example, that you're in a situation where like this is gossip related, then there's someone like you're like a third party bystander, because no one really ever is, but like you're a third party bystander to some gossip, or like a tension between someone else and someone else, and someone within this dynamic who's vibrating at a lower consciousness tries to like tempt you into being a part of this gossip as like a third party, to like help them basically persecute someone else. You can choose so you can do a lot of different things here. You can choose to help them and then, you know, really confirm that, you know, you're aligned with like a lower vibrational consciousness. You can pretend that you didn't know that that was happening, and you can pretend that, you know, you're not involved even though you witnessed it, which kind of like, you know, aligns you with whoever's being persecutory. Or you can like literally help the person that you can clearly see being persecuted in whatever way that makes the most sense for you to do. And all of those choices end up being whether or not you're worthy of the divine favor. So you can't be mad, like, you know, when you start to lose favor, if you're like noticing yourself aligning with forces that even when they seem bigger than you, because you might be thinking like, hey, like if you can't beat them, join them. But not everybody who's like big, like the big sea serpent, you know, sometimes you have to be willing to like, you know, die. And that's kind of like this Aries energy of like, you need to stand for something. Like you need to have like a ground that you're willing to stand on that like secures your position in favor. Because as long as you're not willing to secure your position in favor, it's always going to be kind of like, you're always going to be on shaky ground, basically. So yeah, that's the Aries energy. And then moving into Libra, which is the opposite. This is literally the, like what I was saying, there's repercussions here. Because Libra talks about the scales of karma, and it's how you are impacts other people, and what that means, not even just other people, but just like the world around you. Like let's say like if you litter and you know that you're littering and you know that the world is dying and you continue to litter, then you're gaining negative karma, you know what I'm saying, for being conscious in your own deficit and not changing because you feel like, well, you know, we're already dying, the world's already polluted, the ocean's already full of trash. Like you can if you know the problem exists, like why perpetuate it, even if it is an overwhelming problem, you know? Like that's where your character is called into question. Like who are you truly, beyond like who you know that you should be, because everybody knows who they should be, you know? Like everybody knows, everyone has like a deep down a north star that like leads them in the direction of like goodness. And that's what I truly believe, because like I said, I do believe that like Christ died for all of our sins and like ultimately paid everybody has the ability to go to heaven being like a higher state of consciousness. Like everybody has the ability to get there, but other people are more resistant and more easily tempted into staying lower than other people. And that's really what I feel like the difference is between Cassiopeia and Andromeda. Cassiopeia being the divine favored few, like chosen ones, those who are like married to their father, to their like masculine, Perseus, the like when Father God basically, versus those who were like chained to the stone and facing down this sea monster. So yeah, with Libra, the scripture that's related to this is in Daniel 5:27, which says, "Thou art weighed in the balances or the scales, and are found wanting. So the scales represent this theme of redemption or purchase and describe a commercial transaction. And the idea that's presented by this book that I was just talking about is that commerciality is actually the heart of Christianity because of the fact that Christ has like died for our sins, basically. So the redemption really means to purchase back. And Psalms 106:10 says, he redeemed them from the hand of the enemy by dying on the cross, which represents the first decan or constellation of Libra. The second decan is the victim, and this is the constellation that depicts like a wolf pursuing a sheep. And in John 10:15 and 18, it says, I lay my life down for the sheep. No man may take it away from me. I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to take it again. And that's what I was kind of saying again with this like third party, like bystander, judge, witness kind of energy. In my own life, I've been facing like corporate giants and like just really large organizations that basically are committed to dysfunction that they rely upon in order to like, you know, like, how do I say this without saying it? I don't know why I'm still like trying to like dance around saying it, because like that kind of feels like still aligning with like, you know, the greater power, because I don't really know where that fear of calling the devil by its name really comes from, other than the fact that the devil might be in the energy around me right now. But beyond it, like I've been dealing with like trafficking systems in my local community and like becoming aware of them, and then deciding like where I stand in relation to them, because I've been like, I had applied for a job with like the government, like the local government, because I have like long-term goals related to my leadership amongst people. So I was thinking like, hey, like I'm gonna apply for this job. Maybe this will help me get like a name in my community that will help me to kind of get to where I want to be in the future, right? So this is the sea snake energy, where I'm trying to pursue a goal and I have this big temptation, like this big monster in front of me that says like, you have to do it my way, and if you're not doing it my way, then good luck getting it done. But the mode of operation is not one that I can agree to. So there's a question here, the cross, there's like a decision that needs to be made. And then after you commit to that, you're saying like, I'm willing to be victimized for my decision because I know that my decision is the right decision, even though it's a decision that's going to cause me to be persecuted by you. And that's like the whole Jesus thing, where like, in this situation for me, Jesus is my son because Jesus is teaching me how to be willing to take licks, basically. Like, for what I believe, because I am one of so many in this area that there is like an overwhelming force of opposition kind of around me that I have to resist against to even like, you know, be productive in my own life. Like there's a lot of people who kind of want to knock me off of my spot within my community because my existence here is a threat to what goes on here. Yeah. So then there's Christ, the silent and submissive sufferer. And it says in Isaiah 56:76 or 53:76, as a sheep before her shearers is dumb, so he, Christ, opened not his mouth. And basically he like surrenders himself. He knows exactly what's about to happen to him, and he's like, okay, I gotta go along with it because this is what I have to do. This is my mission, basically. And my purpose in this life is to have a certain amount of impact, and I have to know that that's gonna come with some positivity, and it's gonna come with negativity as well, and they're probably gonna be equal amounts. So if I'm noticing that my life is progressing, that I'm doing better, that comes with a higher level of like attack, because there's more to lose. There's more people wanting to take things from me than there have been ever before, because I have more with which to take. So as I up level spiritually, I have to understand that there are people who are equally as negative or equally as low, or like as high as I get, there are people who are equally as low that are going to be attracted to me because of the polarity in our energy. So like where I was less spiritually developed before, I had less spiritually developed enemies. So like the bosses grow as your strength increases, and that's kind of a scary thing. That's what I've had to, you know, like really deal with and acclimate to recently, where like I've been, you know, taking some losses here and there because I haven't always understood what I was dealing with and how deep and how strong some of my opponents are. That doesn't mean that I'm not protected against them though, because the last decan of Libra is Corona, the crown. And it says in Philippians 2:6-9, who being in the form of God thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and if being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. Wherefore God also hath highly exalted him and given him a name which is above every name. And so basically this is basically just saying that Christ basically wins. Like Jesus wins all the time over death and Satan, because that's the way that it's meant to be. That's the way that it's always going to be, because that's just how it is. It's like you just, yeah, but like as you rise from victimhood, like once you defeat that final boss, you kind of become like a goat. Like literally the cycle repeats again with Aries, like the self. Like after you, the greatest of all time, like you're someone then. And then through that someone-ness, you continue your influence of defeating another level. Because it's like, in my own life, I had to go through my own things. And then once I figured out how to like do my thing and like defeat my thing, because I had an insane amount of mental illness, and I'm now like able to live a life and function in a way that like I had never envisioned for myself. Like I thought I was gonna die like a long time ago, and I'm still here, and it's only because I've allowed myself to be guided here, and I've allowed myself to live a life and like discipline myself into an existence that allows for this. Like that takes something. It takes a certain amount of effort and sacrifice, and I've definitely had to sacrifice a lot to get here. So it's just, once you do that, you then are able to become the example of that, and then through that example, through being that example, you gain a lot even then. So it just kind of, and then once you've because then the people who you have helped by being an example then go through their own process, and then they become someone, and then they have an example, and then you still gain from it. It's like an exponential growth process, like seriously. And that's why it's Corona the crown, where like there's like a royalty kind of element where you end up having kind of dominion over a lot of different people, because you just gain a certain level of spiritual prestige through doing this level of work, by being committed to overcoming the temptation that's constantly surrounding you. Like the things that like you in this collective like you're gonna resonate with like are like extreme. Like the things that like people who resonate with me are gonna relate to, like it's insanely badass, it's spiritually badass, but it's like it's cool. Like it's cool to be Christian, like seriously. And then like I'm saying that, and it's like part of me is like, bro, you're cornball, but like it's actually really cool. Like it's actually really fucking cool. I'm really proud of like my God and what he's done for me in my life, and what I've seen, like the work that I've seen him do through me. Like I'm honored to be the vessel for this thing. Like, you know, like I'm honored to be a part of this greater functioning system. And I wouldn't trade up on my position in this system for any kind of material temptation. And I almost did. So like I'm not gonna sit here and act like I'm some kind of like, right? Because when this whole first thing happened, like I still wanted my goal. I was like, maybe I can find a way to like wrangle this serpent. Maybe I can dominate this serpent myself, like me in life material. Like maybe I can control it, but you can't control it. And it will trick you into thinking that you have control and then snatch it back. So I had to go through that lesson, because I was thinking that I was going to be able to basically have my cake and eat it too. And you can't all the time. You can't all the time. And yeah, I would say beware of that temptation, because I definitely went through a cycle, which is the reason why I'm able to like tell you guys this now, is because I was basically tested in who I was going to be and what I was going to do with my leadership position, and what lengths I was willing to go to, what sacrifices I was willing to make of myself and my own morality in order to get to where I wanted to go and have the position and presence that I wanted to have. And I'm glad that things worked out the way that they were, but it wasn't like I immediately made the right choice. I had to be developed through that process. So if you are feeling any level of like, you know, shame towards your own growth here and the lessons that you're learning, like if you're like, man, like I shouldn't have ever been tempted in that way, don't be like upset, because you really do need to like live through your life. Like I know like a lot of times in the spiritual community we like hope that we could just like snap our fingers and things will like, you know, be different within ourselves, but a lot of times like we have to develop through process, and you can't rush that process. Like I said before in the very beginning, like natural growth takes time, and you can know that there's something kind of like off kilter within yourself and not have the tools at that moment to make the adjustment, and that's okay too. It's okay to do what you can for as long as you know you can, and then make the change when it makes sense to make that change. Another like example of this is when I first got this apartment, I had like no fucking furniture. Like there was nothing in here. I was sleeping on the floor for like months, and you know I couldn't do anything about that until I could. And like it's like while it was like going on and I was sleeping on the floor every single night, I had to make sure that I wasn't in the mindset of being upset about the fact that I didn't have a bed, because you know, you can only, you know, do so much at one time. Like it would be unreasonable for me to expect to just like immediately have the house and the bed and every single sofa and furniture piece that I wanted and have it be fully decorated. Like there is a process that is important to be followed, and I won't even really be able to fully appreciate certain things if I don't go through the process of acquiring them in a way that's morally like, you know, because I could have like, you know, ended up just saying, you know what, I'm just gonna open up business and prostitute myself out for the first month of me being here, and then I'll be rich, you know, like I could have done that, you know, like, you know, everybody is making their own choices here, but I decided I wanted to take my time, not ask anybody for money that I knew didn't have good intentions toward me, not compromise, not, you know, submit myself to anything I didn't want to be attached to long term, because I also could have gotten a job. I don't want to work for anybody. I'm not happy when I do that. So I just decided like, hey, I'm gonna put my nose to the grind. I'm gonna like change up my services. I'm gonna figure out ways I can like advertise my services differently. I'm gonna show up on lives more often. I'm gonna create more content. I'm gonna make sure people know who I am and what I do, and that's the way that I'm gonna end up seeing the growth that I want to see, and I don't have to compromise on myself in order to do that, because I like in my mind I'm thinking like, hey, if I just, you know, cut this corner, get this job, I'll make this money faster, and like sure, I'll be able to count on it every single 2 weeks, but my quality of life would decrease, and I want to continue to be the happy, you know, inflow, feminine, receiving, passive person that I enjoy being. So once again, if you're in a process here of development in any kind of way, allow yourself to just like take the steps, because even in an earlier stage of my like entrepreneurship, I wasn't always capable of not having a job. Like I don't know, I mean, I guess I probably was, but I didn't see it that way. So let your perspective change, you know, with time as you develop, because I think if you're feeling like what I just said and you're like, well, no, like I can't just like stop what I'm doing today and like, you know, expand into what I want, I don't know, I would say really think about that, because I mean there probably is a timeline where, you know, you could if you're willing to shift there, but like understand that it comes with sacrifice, because I feel like people who I'm talking to here, like at any point that you decide that you want to pursue your purpose with passion, I don't understand why you wouldn't be divinely supported in doing that. And that's what I had to realize in myself, is as soon as I was kind of ready for my life, it was there for me. I just needed to kind of step into it and believe that I was going to be supported in doing so. And I needed to be okay with what that choice meant, even when it like took me down pathways that I didn't necessarily want to go down. Because like I said, like, you know, I've been homeless like for months. Like I've just like not had stable housing. I've had to like move from place to place. Like I don't have a car, like I walk places. So it's like there's certain things that like, you know, you have to be okay with as you grow into the person that you see yourself as being. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to get there, and it doesn't even mean that it has to take as long as you think it might. Because there is like this concept of like overnight growth, or like things happening before your eyes. Because I just planted another like plant, it's like a flower, and like the sprout, like I saw it like come out from the ground and open up its leaves within like a span of like a couple hours. And that really surprised me, because I didn't think that it was going to like basically grow in front of my eyes. Like, it's like I looked at it in the beginning of the morning when I put it on my windowsill, and it was like, you know, folded up on itself. And then when I came to like bring it back down on my altar, it was open, and it was like a beautiful thing. Okay, shit. I gotta have this because my battery's about to die. But yeah, like, just, I don't know. I kind of feel like there's an overwhelming kind of just energy of allowing things to transform, and resisting temptation in that process, knowing that maintaining your favor is going to come with sacrifice, being okay with being the odd man out, understanding that being the odd man out actually is what elevates you into the position that you want to be in. Because you may think that if I don't have community support, I can't get to where I want to go because I needed the community to be supported. But you'll actually find that the more you distance yourself away from what you don't like, the closer you get to what you do like. And sometimes making enemies of people will bring you closer to people who are like you. So if you're making enemies right now, it could actually be, you know, aligning you with a stronger collective, a more powerful collective of people who are more like you, because it's like the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing. So think about that. Yeah, okay, like I said, my battery's gonna die, so I'm going to go ahead and end this live. We've already been here for like an hour, so I feel satisfied about what I've communicated, right? Okay, so the last little bit of thing that I put on here there's a couple more Bible verses. I guess I'll read them. It says in Hebrews 2:9, but we see Jesus for the suffering of death crowned with glory and honor. And it talks about like just him rising from victimhood into authority. And then it says, be grateful unto death, and I will make or give thee a crown of life, in Revelation 2:10, where in this case death represents a transformational process, a chemical reaction, photosynthesis. So be faithful unto your processes even when they're difficult and uncomfortable for your ego, and that will allow you to have more like seamless transitions from place to place, and that will allow like change to happen faster. Because some people have like asked me like kind of, you know, how I'm like young and accomplished in certain ways, and I definitely feel like that part of that is like my purpose, and I'm kind of meant to be accomplishing certain things at certain times. But I also feel like a lot of that is because I have not been very attached to things. Like if I had been a bit more egoic about like my career, my academic validation, I might have, you know, went to Spelman and, you know, became a lawyer, and that might have derailed me a couple of years because I'm the kind of person who likes to, you know, finish things. So if I had taken on another cycle of school, I feel like I would have finished it. And that might have not given me enough time to be developing spiritually the way that I have in the absence of, you know, school. Because I haven't gone to college. Like the whole social aspect, I had to sacrifice that. Like I didn't get prom, I didn't get high school sports, I didn't go to like regular schools. So I was grinding like on my intellectual shit. Like since day one. So I mean like give and take basically. And then actually today I was watching a documentary about like space phenomena, because I just like to do stuff like that sometimes. And then I learned about how the sun actually controls the weather on like the inner planets, but then the outer planets it doesn't actually have that much of an effect, which I had never really thought about that much, because I was thinking like, you know, the sun is just the big boss, because if it affects gravitationally, I was thinking that, you know, I don't know. But apparently on Saturn, like which is, you know, that karma Libra scales energy, sun Libra, you know, once again on Saturn, the weather, like the occurrences, are controlled by the internal heat. So once again, like the source being within us as well as it being outside of us, because there's like this idea of like us being children of God, like, you know, like the planets being the children of our sun, you know. But when it comes to the karma and how we develop as people, I think a lot of what manifests around us is a result of what exists within us. So there's an important process of becoming aware of what's going on within us. And then, what else did I write here? Sometimes I can't even read my own handwriting. So pressure on Saturn, like in the atmosphere is 80 times deeper than that of like Earth's deepest ocean. And the storms that like happen on Saturn make they rain diamonds, which is kind of great because you know like the whole thing about like pressure makes a diamond. So if you're feeling like you're under pressure, you're just being developed into a better version of yourself. So like if I think people in this collective are really gonna resonate with having difficult lives, like just experiencing extreme amounts of adversity. And I think that there's a lot about how that's developing us into authorities because Saturn is kind of like, you know, like suit and tie kind of guy. I don't know, he reminds me of like Nanami from Jujutsu Kaisen. If you guys are, I keep mentioning animes. But yeah, I feel like, yeah, I mean, if you're noticing things are kind of getting hectic around you right now, it's probably because of what's happening inside of you that's transforming. Because I know that me being here where I'm at right now and having certain enemies that I'm having right now are because of, like, it's a manifestation of traumas that I've experienced in childhood. So I feel like I've really been unpacking a lot of my early childhood, especially ever since I've been dislocated from my parents. Like, I've had just, like, the ability for the first time in my life to, like, feel type of way. Because like I said before, like, my mom, like, the conditioning was, like, you don't get to be upset about anything. Like, I don't really want to ever see you demonstrate an expression that's not positive. Because, like, you don't deserve to. Like, my life is worse than yours. I've been living longer. I've been making worse choices and living with them. And you're just a kid. So now that I'm, like, an adult and I'm, like, you know, doing the adult thing, I have a lot of time to think about, you know, a lot of bad things that happened to me when I was a kid. And that I never really had the chance to think about before because thinking about them would have been counterproductive to remaining alive in the situation. So, yeah. I think there could be some like raining diamonds, like you could be experiencing some storms at this time, but it's kind of like enriching the soil in some kind of way. Like it's, I mean, it feels like it's negative, but if you are having like energetic releases and you're purging things emotionally, you can expect it to be intense because of the benefits that's going to come from basically unpacking it. You kind of need to like do that deep diving, like Mariana Trench kind of things. Like your deepest, darkest secrets are going to be things that are going to be like poked at right now, because if you allow them to remain deep and dark, then that's going to be the source of your bad lighting. Like what you reject from yourself is going to be the thing that ends up dominating you. So you really do need to kind of have that acceptance for yourself, and then the belief in the fact that you've already been redeemed. So even in the understanding that you are a sinner and that you have sinned and that you probably have done some real fucked up shit in your life, that doesn't mean that, you know, you're not worthy of divine favor even still. You just need to maintain it by not making choices that you know are bad. Like I said before, if you know that you've littered before and you know there's a littering crisis, stop littering. Like, it doesn't matter if you littered yesterday. It doesn't matter if you littered 10 minutes ago. Never litter again from this moment on, and you're gonna be okay. Like, it's really about the choices that you make, because Saturn is a long-term situation. Like, it builds upon itself, and it requires consistency. So it's not enough to just stop littering today if you're gonna litter again next week. You need to fully understand the fact that littering isn't something that I even want to do anymore. I have no desire to litter anymore, because I understand that this isn't something that like reflects kindly upon me. Even beyond that, it's like I'm not the kind of person who litters. I don't want to be the kind of person who litters, because I understand that littering is not good. I know it's like not littering for a lot of people, but it's just the energy of polluting any environment, any person, even yourself. Like this could be like an addictive quality where you're like, I am fully aware of the fact that smoking this cigarette is going to take half an hour off my life. And am I gonna still smoke it? Because we still have the choice to make our, like, everybody gets a choice. So, you know, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse here. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and that maybe it helped in some kind of way. And thank you for listening to my thoughts. I hope I developed them in a way that was, you know, easy to communicate. I put a playlist of songs that I was listening to as I was writing this all out in the description. If you want to listen to any of them, especially maybe like the one I recommend the most is Lamb Sauce by The Alchemist, because it came out like while I was writing about Aries, and I thought that was the craziest thing ever. because I wasn't controlling the music. It was like on shuffle. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed it and that you liked it. Let me know, like, I know that Skelly's been commenting and I haven't really been able to like respond as much, but if you guys have any feedback or want to let me know like what you thought about what I was saying, I'd appreciate it. But yeah. Hope you guys have a great day and a good week and that you grow a whole bunch. Bye. Stop the live.